Hello everyone, Lisa here. Today I'm going to show you a demonstration of a paper pieced mug rug. This is a pattern that I came up with, actually two different patterns, light and rest, and it as well. These are again paper pieced projects. The link to these two patterns will be in the description box below. Look how cute these are. I just got these out of the wash. I did a real quick press on them. I am super impressed with these Crayola fabric markers. If you would like to see how I used these to create these little panels here, there will be a link to this video in the description box. But this is what we're doing today. I'm going to walk you step by step on how to piece this quilt top together. If you want to see how I did the binding, I'll link that video down in the description box below as well. I show you step by step on how to use the back as you're binding. So who is ready to get started and learn how to do a paper piece project? It makes your project go by super fast and it looks like you've taken a long time, but you did not. I love those kind of projects. Let's get started. Alright, if you love doing projects that look like they have taken you a long time to make and that might have been complicated, yet in actuality they were very simple and pretty quick, then you're going to love paper piecing and this little project. This is two different patterns. Actually, the foundation pattern is the same, however the verses that go inside are different. Let's take a look at what all is included in this pattern. You have the cover page for your binder. You have some very easy instructions, and I'm going to actually walk you through this process today in this video. You have your fabric map, and this is the actual foundation that we're going to use to piece together our project. You have your tracing template, and that is what we used to trace out our piece, just like that. And then you have paper piecing templates, and you can use these if it aids in the piecing of your project. And what you do is you cut out on the solid line, and that gives you these pieces here. How it makes it easy to use these is you can fussy cut out of your scraps, and you know for sure that you have a big enough piece for the placement of each piece. It's going to give you a little bit over 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and so when you're trimming out in between your different pieces, there's going to be very little waste. And so I like to use little templates to cut out my pieces. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we do in the first step. The instructions say to trace on your fabric your design or your image. And so what I used was 100% cotton. I'm going to put a link to the video where I actually traced my images in the description box below. You'll see the product that I used. It was the Crayola fabric markers and how that process went. And so the first step in making this mug rug is that you do this part. You go ahead and trace your image and cut out your piece. And this is actually piece 4 in our project. The next thing the instructions say to do is to go ahead and cut out your pieces on the solid line. And so you have all of your individual pieces. And this one here you use for piece number 6 and number 7. Next, we're ready to go ahead and cut out our fabric pieces, and it is very easy when you have a template to go by, and you can actually cut several pieces out at one time. Let's go ahead and take a look at how I'm going to cut my fabric out. Alright, I'm going to start with number 6 and number 7 because this is 2 pieces, and I want to use the same fabric in both the top and bottom pieces. Also keep in mind the direction of the fabric for the piece that you're cutting. This one, I know that this is going to be the top and bottom, and so I would like my eggs going up like this. So I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm cutting out my pieces. Remember, we are cutting 2 because this is the template for number 6 and 7. You could individually just take your scissors and cut around the piece. I'm just going to use a straight edge ruler for this piece and my rotary cutter, and just simply cut around the edges of this piece. And it does not have to be perfect. This is just a guide. Remember, we do have a little bit over 1/4 of an inch all the way around. And so we do have some wiggle room with our template piece. And so there is my piece number 6 and 7, just like that. And then for the smaller pieces, I just like to find some scraps. Let's see, where are my templates? Where'd they go? I just like to go ahead and position it on the scrap just like that and get the most use out of each one of my scraps. And just holding this one, I just do a rough cut around my paper template. And believe me, none of these little pieces get thrown away. I like to make a lot of art quilts, and so I save all my little snippets. And just like that, we have piece number 1. Because these 3 pieces are very similar, I usually like to keep my template with my piece and go ahead and cut out all my pieces and have everything lined up ready to start sewing. All right, we are ready to go ahead and get started. Let's start by talking about the paper foundation for just a minute. There are 7 different fabric locations marked on your map, 1 through 7. Then you'll notice little circles with numbers in them, and those are your stitch lines. So always remember to go in numerical order. This is stitch line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it's really only 6 seams that put this whole mug rug together, and the line with the circle is your stitch line. All right, so the first thing I like to do is go ahead and fold all of my stitch lines. That just makes everything much easier down the road when the fabric is attached. Just like that. And now all of our stitch lines are folded. We're going to start with placement number 1. See if we can move this over just a little bit. Fabric number 1 is this piece right here. Now today I'm going to be using a glue stick, the Elmer's washable school glue, to keep my pieces on the paper foundation. You could use pins. This glue does wash out of your projects, and it is a strong enough hold to get us through our project, and yet at the end I'll show you how everything comes off the paper very easily. So what I do is just put a little bit of glue right in the center of piece number 1, and I'm going to position my piece keeping in mind to make sure that I have overlap at least 1/4 inch around all of my stitch lines. All of the bold lines you want overhang from your piece. We're just going to heat set that and let that dry for a second. And that really does not take that long. You could use pins if you'd rather use the pins. But just like that, our piece is going to stay in place. Next, we're going to start with piece number 2. Now, piece number 1, we started right side up on our paper foundation. Everything else, all the other pieces, will go in place to be stitched down right side facing down, okay? So here we are, number 2. We're going to flip that and match the raw edges right there. We're going to fold our template just like that. And we're going to actually bring it to the machine just like this. I'm going to bring my needle right next to the edge of this paper and just sew a straight seam from edge to edge all the way through. See if I can see at this angle. It helps if you drop the needle in the down position, bring your paper right next to that needle, and when you feel it stop, you're in a good place. Drop the presser foot and just stitch a seam right next to that paper. We're not actually stitching on the paper. Go ahead and trim my threads up. At this point, we can go ahead and trim this to an exact 1/4 inch. And you'll see very, very tiny pieces of waste after you use the little paper templates. Now we're ready to go ahead and press this open. I like to put a little dot of glue right in the center of number 2. I finger press this just a little bit, and then I'm going to press it with my iron. And it is simple as that. Just like that, I can work with my pieces and nothing's going to fall off, and I don't have any pins poking my fingers. Next, we're going to take, actually, I see I have a little bit extra hang off there. Just to help things line up, I'm going to go ahead and trim this to a 1/4 inch. Just like that. I'm going to take my piece number 3, and remember to keep flipping the right side down from now on. We're going to match up those 2 raw edges. Also keeping in mind that you still want your overhang a 1/4 inch between piece number 4 and piece number 5. We're going to fold the paper template again. And just like that, that will be our sewing line. Again, drop the needle. Trim our pieces, or our strings. And now we don't have to trim this because remember we trimmed it just a second ago to a 1/4 inch. So we're ready to place some glue in the position of number 3. Finger press that open. And then give a quick press with your iron. That dries the glue and presses your seam at the same time. Now we're going to go ahead and add piece number 4. So let's go ahead and trim off this edge here to a 1/4 inch. So we have a good easy placement of piece number 4. Again, we just have little bits that we're trimming off that gets wasted in this project. And we're starting with piece number 4. Now this one is a little bit tricky because you want to make sure that all of your image gets set into piece number 4. I'm going to go ahead and mark this just with a water-soluble marker for myself because I can sort of see through this fabric. I know that my stitch line needs to be right there. And this is going to help me place piece number 4. I might be making that a little bit more confusing than it needs to be. Just like that. Holding our fabric in place. it this way. There we go. All right, and we're ready to bring that to the machine. Alright, we can open everything up, and that looks like it's going to be a perfect placement. Yay! We can go ahead and put a spot of glue on piece number 4. We're going to finger press that open and into place. We're not stretching anything out, we're just finger pressing very gently. And we can press that seam and dry the glue. And then we're ready to move on to position number 5. Again, I'm going to go ahead and trim this now. We're going to take our number 5 fabric, right sides together, just like that. Holding the fabric with your hands, just like that. We're ready to sew this seam. Bring our needle down, bring the paper right next to the needle, and sew that seam. I like to go ahead and trim all my little strings now as we go along. We're going to open or put a little bit of glue right in number 5. Finger press that open. And press everything down. Now we are ready to add our piece number 6. So let's trim this seam. Just like that, we are placing our piece of fabric. And because we use the templates, everything sort of just fits right into place, which makes it pretty easy with the placement. We're going to hold all that together, and that is the seam that we're going to sew. I have strings everywhere. We're ready to press that one open. Put just a little dab of glue there. Open that in place. Dry that glue. And then we're on to piece number 7. So you can see how quickly this goes along. If you have several pieces already cut out, you could just sit here and make several of these all at one time. I like this pattern too because you don't necessarily have to trace this image. You could use any fabric in that place, just like this one, which is a little busy. But I substituted the image that I traced for just a regular piece of fabric. So you could very easily do that, or create your own image there. Next, we're ready for piece number 7, and this is our last piece. Again, right side down. Line up all of our edges, hold it all in place, fold the paper back, and sew that seam there. Alright, piece number 7 we are going to glue in place because I'm going to show you one last tip about this foundation paper. Let's go ahead and finger press that in place. And press and dry the glue. Alright, just like that. Now we're ready to trim everything out, and you can easily do that by using your paper, and you're going to get an exact, perfect 8.5 by 11, which is what the pattern calls for. I'm going to use this ruler here. Now we're just matching the straight edge of the ruler up with our paper and trimming all of this extra off. And you can see, again, we don't have a lot of waste here. I do save all these little itty bits to go in my art quilts, and so I don't even consider that waste. All these bits are getting saved. Some people like to save them. Some people don't bother with these little tiny pieces. All right, and just like that, we have our perfectly trimmed out quilt top. And because we used the Elmer's washable school glue, it held it in position enough to work with it. But look how easy everything comes off. There's no weird residue on my fabric. And this you can use over and over and over again. Matter of fact, the more you use it, the more it gets folded, the easier it is to use. And so I will reuse this until it falls apart. And then I have my quilt top. Now, what the pattern calls for is a piece of batting that is exactly 8.5 by 11. I like to go ahead and put my batting on there and then do my quilting. And then the pattern calls for a quilt backing that is, let's see, 10.5 inches wide and 13 inches long. And what that will do will give you enough extra to use as your binding for your quilt. Or you could trim your back to an 8.5 by 11 and use a traditional binding, and those measurements or the length of binding is in the pattern for that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the other one. I'm going to quilt these and bind them, and we're going to meet back and look at our finished product. Here we are, our little projects are all done. Paper pieced mug rugs. Look how precise the piecing is. And how easy was that? That was so easy and so quick. Once you get the hang of all the orders of the pieces, everything goes together, and it looks like you have spent a lot of time and In actuality, it was very, very quick and simple. I used the back as my binding on these projects. This one I did goof up a little bit. You could see the difference in the size of the binding. This one is using the inch as what the pattern calls for, and this one I goofed up and trimmed to 3/4 of an inch, so the binding is a little bit smaller. I actually kind of like that. You could do both if you like a smaller binding. But these are my two latest patterns. Again, the link to my Etsy shop will be in the description box below. I am super excited about all the different uses with the Crayola markers. Again, I do have a video on how to use those. I'll link that down below as well. I hope you guys give this project a go. I would love to see your pictures. You can join me over on Facebook. My Facebook link is in the description box. Come and join me and share your pictures. I'm sure everyone would love to see what kind of projects you create using this pattern or using a paper pieced pattern. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you're a new viewer. I love doing fun creative videos, and you can check out how I did the binding using the back in all of my different videos. I do have a video for that. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful week.